This is Johnny Dosco. Stay tuned for another Score Sheet podcast. Holy Kadelka!
Hi, and welcome to another Score Sheet podcast. We've made it through a couple weeks of the season. Thought we'd maybe bring up a few topics about hot and cold players or who you might want to target in an upcoming in-season draft. I'm happy to say that I have as a guest today Todd Zola. Todd was co-founder of mastersball.com, still is the person running that website, which is a great place for fantasy advice. Todd's also recently begun doing some freelance work for ESPN. How are you, Todd?
Doing great, Jeff. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm always happy when the whole preseason workload dies down and I can start enjoying baseball.
Well, I am too, except Bobby Valentine called me out for not being emotionally and physically involved in my work as I normally am.
Yeah, that whole Kevin Youkilis really struck home to me because in my local single-season league, I actually picked him with the last pick of the second round, and that was the first pick of that night's draft where everyone in the room started laughing.
Huh, that's interesting. I mean, other than the injuries over the years, he's a quality player, and, I think he's going to contribute when he's on the field. I'm not, I don't read too much into this whole situation. I mean, I'm in Boston, so I usually don't pay attention to these sorts of things, but this was one that's hard to ignore. Let's just put it that way.
Well, yeah, I was defending my Youkilis pick for the rest of the night. Unfortunately, he hasn't really backed me up yet, and because it's a local league with my brother and 3 or 4 of my best friends from all the way back in high school, I'm still catching flack. But I didn't really understand Bobby Valentine's motives for that. It seems like he managed to piss off pretty much the whole clubhouse.
Pretty much. Now, I mean, I don't know. I usually don't get into this sort of thing, announcers, good, bad, managers, good, bad. It is what it is. What do I know sort of thing. But I'm making an exception with Mr. Valentine. He's just, I'm not a fan in this early part of the season. I don't understand what he's doing. Maybe he's directing the voice of upstairs. Who knows? Maybe that it's not really him, but maybe this is management, and they've picked out Youkilis as the punching bag for whatever reason, or maybe it's just Bobby V, trying to get something done. I don't know. It was just weird. I was actually, you've seen Youkilis break enough helmets. I'm surprised. I think good for him that he didn't go goo-goo over the words. He just took it in stride and says, I don't agree with him, and and then went out and hit a home run the next day.
Yeah. Well, along with Youkilis, like every single season, after just 2 weeks, there's a variety of players that have started out far better than most of us expected, and a variety of players that have started out far worse. So I imagine you, like most people with a lot of experience in the fantasy field, you probably don't pay a huge amount of attention to 1 or 2 weeks worth of stats.
No, not really. I'll pay attention to role changes and playing time changes and even different positions in the batting order. For instance, someone like a Jose Altuve was hitting second, and if he's really going to be hitting eighth with Jed Lowry back, at least from, this is more maybe from a roto, not necessarily score sheet point of view, his counting stats could wane. Now, in score sheet, as long as his rate stats are still, where you want him, it's not going to matter as much. But I do look at those sorts of things where, did I misestimate the amount of time a player was going to play? Is he a platooning and not platooning? Actually, in score sheet, again, it doesn't matter so much with closing. It doesn't matter, if Guerra's closing and Jansen's not. If you got Jansen as your score sheet closer, you don't care what Mattingly's doing because you're looking at the peripherals.
That's one benefit of score sheet. You're not at the mercy of who some real-life manager is going to give the saves to. If you have the pitcher that is pitching the best for that team's bullpen, you're not pulling your hair out just because, like you said, Mattingly has Jansen pitching in the 8th instead of the 9th. As long as he gets guys out, he's going to help your score sheet team.
In the same way with starting pitchers, you're not going to shy away from a guy who's going to give a really good start for a lesser team and not pick up your rotisserie W. You're just looking for your score sheet guy to give up 3 or 4 runs and let your offense do it, and he'll get the win. So I'll put a Kevin Millwood on my team here, or Bartolo Colon, or someone who might not get a lot of wins, but's going to keep my score sheet team in the games.
That's a very good point. You don't have to worry so much about whether the Mariners, the A's, the Astros are scoring runs. Bartolo Colon's kind of interesting because he certainly pitched better than I think anyone really expected. He's had the benefit of facing maybe not the greatest hitting lineups in the world.
Well, keep in mind that he looked really good at the beginning of last year, and he's pitching similarly, but now he's got Oakland at his back where he had Yankee Stadium at his back previously, and that alone is going to help. The fourth outfielder that Oakland provides because it's such a big park, and he's pitched in Seattle. That's another big park. So I'm not so sure he's doing anything differently than last year, but Yankee Stadium versus the Coliseum, I think, as we all will call it, it's a completely different environment. If you pound the zone in a big park like that, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I think park changes definitely help. So there are some guys that, certainly if the draft was held today, Bartolo Colon, you have to pay a little attention to the stats. But for instance, the biggest name out there, Albert Pujols. I'm sure you're not suggesting that someone might want to trade Albert Pujols just because he hasn't hit a home run.
No, and if anybody's listening from the BP Kins League and has Albert Pujols and is concerned, give me a ring. No, the point being, I'm not, especially guys like Pujols, I'm not worried at all. On the other hand, if he would have 5 homers, I wouldn't be saying that he's going to win the Triple Crown either. It's the ebb and flow. So, you'd like your players to at least be doing normal or average, not necessarily hot, good or bad, but he's going to get his, so he doesn't hit 45 homers, he's going to end up hitting 41. Oh boy, oh no, what am I going to do?
Yeah, pitchers, so I've always thought that, well, we all know that pitchers aren't as predictable, so while I'm not advocating cutting Tim Lincecum or trading him away for nothing, he, unlike Albert, I think you have to be maybe a little more concerned about.
Yes, I think you have to be more concerned, more so, because when a pitcher struggles, you're more, what's the first word? Is he hurt? You see a line, 5 innings, 7 hits, 4 walks. The first thing you do is go to your favorite site to see if he got lifted because he was hurt, as opposed to just a bad game. Whereas Pujols, I don't know that we're as concerned about an injury. I think, it's weird in today's game with Twitter and all the information and Facebook and people wanting to be right and wanting to be smart. All you're hearing now is, loss of velocity, 2 miles off his fastball, this, that, the other thing. It's just so dangerous to make a judgment off of that because you're really not comparing apples to oranges. Who knows what the guns were in other places? What was his April velocity last year? So he threw 94 last year, but in April, was it 91 or 2 and it went up? So I think that's sort of become the buzz now is how fast was he throwing? And that's what everybody's using is to be smart. And I'm not as concerned.
Yeah, it does seem like maybe some of these statistics are getting overblown. The other thing is, if a player has a bad week or 2 in July when he's already had 3 months worth of stats, you might not even notice. Because at that point, it's not going to raise his ERA to 11. It's going to raise it from 3.1 to 3.4 if he has a couple bad outings. So, but that would be as a summation for especially people that maybe haven't played for years. You want to pay attention, and especially, as you said, if you have a guy that loses playing time, then you have to do something about it. But your overall advice, especially for veterans, is don't make rash moves based on a week or 2.
Right. Think about Felix Hernandez. He's faced the A's 3 times. I don't care if it's the A's and make your jokes about how weak a team they're still a professional baseball team. And, the third game, Felix was throwing more breaking balls. The third time you face a team in 2 weeks, the third time I go to a donut shop, I get something different than I got the first 2 times. I want to change it up a bit. So I'm not, oh no, he was throwing, more change-ups or whatever. I wonder if it means he's hurt. No, it means he faced the Oakland A's for the 3rd time in 2 weeks. His ground ball percent is nowhere near what it used to be. Well, Oakland as a team hits more fly balls. So, until you face a cross-section of teams that, that equal the league average, sometimes, like I said, we try to look for a reason for everything, and like we should, but sometimes, in an effort to be too smart and too cute, we get too smart, and we end up when really, overlooking the obvious or making something out of nothing.
Right. Well, so out of maybe a slightly more specific question with the normal amount of injuries there have been, and so guys are getting promoted from the minors, or they're now, instead of being a bench player, they have a starting role. Are there any kind of lesser known players that might be available in league drafts that you would be targeting?
Well, see, what I like to do, as we've talked about at AFL games in November, I'm not completely up to speed yet on all the nuances of score sheet, but I am smart enough to know that lefties hit righties better and righties hit lefties better. So what I like to do at this point of the year is find guys that give me good platoon splits. And I don't worry about how they're going to do over the course of the year. I worry about how they're going to do until the next free agent draft and, whatever, how many weeks that might be. So, well, he's only going to play for another 3 weeks. Well, you know what? That's 3 weeks of a full-time player, and then I have to worry about 3 more weeks until the next draft to replace my Jacoby Ellsbury or Brett Gardner or whatever. So sort of with that as a backdrop, I look for guys that are, Kirk Neuenhuis, for instance, for the Mets, especially because he's a lefty and he gets the better side of the platoon. A guy like Darnell McDonald could be more useful right now because with Crawford and Ellsbury both being out. Juan Pierre may be available. We didn't expect him to play as much as he's playing. Especially the outfield, you seem to get more of these platoon-type guys than in the infield. But that's sort of where I look is, Cleat Thomas, guys that are playing a little more. Ankiel just came back. These guys can be used in a lefty-righty split and, get better than you can make a 280 hitter out of a 250 guy.
Well, that might be because the fact is you're not going to find someone now to replace Ellsbury in terms of production, one guy. But you're right. If you can target one left-handed and one right-handed outfielder, if you don't need depth in other places, then between the two of them platooning, you can at least come a little closer to replacing that lost production.
Oh, absolutely. And don't get hung up on that. Well, Neuenhuis isn't going to play all year. As soon as Torres is better again, he's going to lose his job, like you might if it was, in a head-to-head sort of situation where this kind of is. Let's go on a week-by-week basis. Let's win this week. Let's get that 5-1, report in your mailbox on Thursday morning. That 4-2 report, not the 1-5 that I got today. Thanks, Jeff. But,
yeah, you're welcome. Well,
pitching had a rough week, but anyway.
I think that's very good advice, though, is that you can. If you're trying to replace Ellsbury, you don't need a guy that's going to help you in August. You need a guy that's going to help you for the next 6 weeks. So I think that's good advice to kind of draft players that, obviously getting Ellsbury's backup, for instance, works well. He'll play a lot while Ellsbury's out. And then when Ellsbury's back, you don't need him anyhow. So you don't have to worry about it. The same maybe about pitchers. If you're trying to replace a starting pitcher, and he's going to come back in 3 weeks, you don't need to try to draft some guy that you hope becomes the next phenom. You just need a guy that can give you reasonable starts for the next 3 weeks.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you look for a guy that, a lot of people shy away from guys like, Eric Bedard's taken, but, he falls in drafts because he's not gonna pitch the whole year. Well, you know what? You don't need all you need to worry about is right now. So maybe Bedard's owner got 2 or 3 good starts and is like, you know what? I'm going to sell high on him because he's going to get hurt. Well, all right. Well, if you don't pay full price on the guy, he's healthy now, and when Bedard's healthy, he does really, really well. Graham Godfrey using the Oakland, using the park when he's at home. Sure, these other guys, Anderson and I think Braden's on a setback, whatever. But sure, he's probably not going to. Some of these guys are healthy, but if you get you 3 or 4 starts, especially if you can place him in as your 4th or 5th starter when he has a start at home, you can squeeze a little more out of this lemon to get good stats.
Well, that's good advice. I think maybe to sum that up is you don't have to go for the home run. You don't have to try to pick the guy that's going to be rookie of the year and end up getting 2 or 3 guys that aren't going to play at all. You can just go for the guy that's hot now and it's, like you say, going to help you for 3 weeks till your guy you drafted in March is back off the DL, and he's going to bench whoever you picked anyhow.
Especially in a simulation game like this, where so you don't have Ellsbury, so you get a guy and you move your lineup up one spot, and it turns your first 7 spots are probably like they were before. You just made your 8th spot a little bit stronger by having a platoon in there over what you'd have if you just without Ellsbury, whatever. So I think it's even more important in a head-to-head or definitely a simulation game to look for the small edges. Just to keep it going. Where you lose a game 4-3. If you have Andy Dirks in there as your platoon guy. Maybe you won that game 5-4 because he's a good platoon guy against righties.
That's all excellent advice. I think that hopefully people picked up a nugget of information out of all that. It's been great talking to you. I think we should check back in with each other in 3 or 4 weeks and go with the next round of hot and cold guys.
Works for me, Jeff. As long as it's on a Thursday where my team did better, I may be a little more peppy with my analysis.
I'll make a point that if we're going to talk on a Thursday or Friday, to pick a week where you went 5-1.
Thank you. Well, it happens more often than not. It's just a bad week.
Yeah, well, we all have those. Hey, thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, bye now.